Going to the harbor beyond the White Towers. To the Grey Havens. I don't know why. It makes me sad.
And they always sing too. Apparently, they're always singing. I wasn't sure if that was supposed to be the soundtrack or them singing there, but it kind of felt like them singing because of how. In any case, I'm going to read to you guys the difference that Tolkien had in the books, particularly when it comes to Frodo and Sam meeting the elves on the way. This is after they've encountered the Nazgul, and they found the Nazgul like sniffing on the road, and that freaked them out.
Twice.
The second time, yeah. This is
so
after
they
the second
encounter
time.
the Nazgul twice, and the Nazgul is crawling towards them on the road, sniffing. This time, and the elves scare the Nazgul away.
Yeah, and so here's what Tolkien wrote: the hobbits sat in shadow by the wayside. Before long, the elves came down the lane towards the valley. They passed slowly, and the hobbits could see the starlight glimmering on their hair and in their eyes. They bore no lights, yet as they walked, a shimmer like the light of the moon above the rim of the hills before it rises seemed to fall about their feet. They were now silent, and as the last elf passed, he turned and looked toward the hobbits and laughed. And then another quote: I am Gildor, answered their leader, the elf who had first hailed him, Gildor and Glorian of the house of Finrod. We are exiles, and most of our kindred have long ago departed, and we too are now only tarrying here a while ere we return over the great sea. All right, before you jump into this, because I know, Michael, you have a lot to say about this here. I left this out of the part I edited, the little bit I edited here. We're Tolkien, where Frodo says, Sam, wood elves. I'm like, they're not wood elves. What? Tolkien never even used the word wood elves. They used the word Sylvan, but not wood elves. And it just that was one of the things that also broke me in the.
Well, he does use the word wood elves in The Hobbit, I believe, but
does he?
Anyway?
But
yeah,
I've read the Silmarillion and the others too much lately. I don't go back to the Hobbit.
Yeah, I don't.
However, they're not wood elves. They're like he says right here, we are exiles, which means they're exiled from Valinor, and they're on their way back.
Well, literally, Frodo in the book says literally, the song ended, "These are high elves. They spoke the name of Elbereth," said Frodo in amazement. so this is after he hears them singing. So literally they're high elves, which to me is always funny. It's like, why don't you just say high elves? Like why does it need to be wood elves? I don't understand the change.
Right, yeah. I don't either.
But anyway, I will give credit, before we launch into some of the things that are left out by cutting out the elves, because what happens here is they don't just see them. So to be clear to our listeners, in the movies or in the extended edition,
I was just going to say, make sure this is only the extended edition, right?
Only the extended edition. In the cinematic version, no elves at all. In the extended edition, this short scene, which they identify them as wood elves, not true, and that's it. Having said that, I will give them, because you read the passage about the visual effect the elves have with the starlight glimmering and the moonlight. I thought the visuals were quite nice in the extended edition. I thought that was pretty cool. So no problem with that at all. Big problem is, even in the extended edition, that's all we get. Whereas in the books, there are literally 7 pages of an encounter between the 3 hobbits. That's not just Sam and Frodo, but Sam, Frodo, and Pippin. And Pippin puts his foot in his mouth continually throughout the encounter. And the 3 hobbits and Gildor, Inglorian, and his fellow high elves. So many cool things to be said about that, which we're going to launch into. But that's the basics. Cinematic version, no elves at all. Extended edition, brief glimpse, wrongly identified as wood elves, but nice visuals. Book has a 7-page encounter where the hobbits actually travel with the elves and spend, an evening and sleep in one of the elves' little secret hideaways, Woodhall, a hall of the woods in the Hobbit region called Woodhall, which is between Tuckborough and the Marish, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, but before the river.
I wonder if when Tolkien wrote this part of the Lord of the Rings, if this came early in his writing of it, if he was like, "Oh, I can make my elves the real elves now, not the dancing happy elves from the Hobbit," because they weren't really in the world of Middle Earth in a sense yet. He hadn't.
Well, I do see the balance, right? So, but remember, you just read the first thing that the communication that happens between the elves and the three hobbits in the books is Gildor laughing. So he starts by laughing. So they still have and there's quite a bit of laughter in the 7 pages of dialogue between the elves. Like the elves find the hobbits very amusing, even though some of the subject matter that Gildor talks with Frodo about is very serious, which we're going to talk about. So should we launch in to the differences
Yes,
and what was missed? Okay, so basically, Gildor, upon hearing that a Black Rider had been scared away, invites the three hobbits to go with them, and so they travel all day and into the night, and all the night, I should say, because they're starting out at night, and and then they eat in Woodhall. There's a couple quotes that I wanted to read from this, which I think is really important because it shows what was missed and the importance of what was missed. The first one is about Sam, and it says, after it's talking about the encounter of them eating with the elves and listening to them talk and sing, Sam could never describe in words nor picture clearly to himself what he felt or thought that night, though it remained in his memory as one of the chief events of his life. The nearest he ever got was to say, "Well, sir, if I could grow apples like that, I would call myself a gardener." But it was the singing that went to my heart, if you know what I mean. So we have here, according to Tolkien, one of the chief events of Sam's life, which Jackson cuts out entirely by leaving this out. And also, I would say he misses the opportunity to give us a glimpse into the place that high elves have. I mean, obviously, those of us that love the Silmarillion know all about Finrod, like Gildor saying that he's of the house of Finrod, conjures up all these historical facts of the tragedy of the Silmarillion and the house of Finrod, and so there's pretty awesome stuff there. Gildor is the first one. He's a very Gandalf-like figure. He has the wisdom of Gandalf, and he says something. He references the fact that the hobbits, that the meeting of the hobbits and the elves is, well, I'll read the quote. He says, "In this meeting there may be more than chance," is the quote. So he references basically Iluvatar's will, which is in a subtle way. So he's like a Gandalf figure that way. He won't tell Frodo what the Black Riders are, and Frodo keeps pressing him and Frodo's saying things like, "Frodo reminded me of my kids," actually, because sometimes when an adult topic will come up, which is beyond their maturity level and not appropriate for my wife and I to talk to them about at that point in their life, but they've heard about it and they're asking like, "But what about this? What about this?" I'm like, "Well, I'm not going to tell you all the details now. Here, it's enough for you to know. Avoid this." And that's what Gildor says to the hobbits about the Black Riders. Just avoid them. They're servants of the enemy. Avoid them. And Frodo even says things like, my kids will say, like, "You're making me more scared by not knowing than like, how am I supposed to keep my hope up?"
Right.
Blah, blah.
Yeah.
And Gildor does that very interesting thing, which an adult does with an immature child or teenager, which is his relationship to Frodo, which he says essentially he shows his wisdom by not speaking. He says, "If Gandalf hasn't told you, then I'm not going to tell you." But here's good advice, and of course he provides them with protection all through the night of their company into the halfway to where they're going in halfway to Buckland. So there's a lot. He also names them Elfriend at the end and says that he's going to tell all the other quote wandering companies about them, which are presumably the other elves. So one wonders if perhaps that was one of the ways in which Glorfindel found out about the journey. I mean, who knows? I don't think it says how Glorfindel and Elrond first learned about all this. Maybe it was just Gandalf in passing, but anyway, it's interesting to me that Gildor brings this up and then disappears from the books entirely. We never see Gildor again, which to my mind is probably one of the reasons why he was cut and from the movies, because it was something easy to do. But I think, like we said before, you lose out a lot of that depth of Tolkien's world, the relationship to the elves, the position they play in the world, their power, like the Nazgul are afraid of them, that's incredible. We've never encountered anything. The Nazgul aren't afraid of Aragorn. They aren't afraid of the only people they appear to be afraid of are high elves. They're not afraid of Gandalf. They attacked Gandalf, but they flee from high elves. We have two instances of that. One is this, and with Gildor, and the other is Glorfindel.
They've heard the stories of Fingolfin.
Right. Right. Exactly. So anyway,
wow.
There's my rant.
Wow. Well, then let's start with you then, Michael. Do you think, as you did, is it lore friendly to do what they did?
No, it's not. No. Not lore friendly to cut out the elves. I think you miss a big chunk. It's I'm going to make a distinction here. It's not lore friendly by omission, not by commission. So it's not lore unfriendly because they've warped the lore. They've just cut out so much of the lore. And so yeah.
I'm gonna say yes, and here's why. The theatrical edition completely omitted it. Completely, they were like, "Oh, the elves not leaving." And then when we saw the extended edition, they're like, "Oh, at least we've got the elves leaving." Wood elves still bothered me, but leaving Middle Earth, right? At least we've got that. And because in the same way that Tom Bombadil kind of comes and goes right away, although the Barrow Downs would have been really nice. I wish that would have been there. I would say it's not compared to what we did in the last change, where they cut out 6 chapters, and this being part of those here. But there was so much there. This here, I think they can get away with and not lose the lore by just omitting this part of it.
Okay. Fair enough. I understand why you answered.
All right. So does the change make for better cinema? Okay. Let me do a caveat. So I'm going to have to talk this through. If this were a TV show where we could do all these changes, we had more time, I think it would work. I mean, I'm not against the 5-hour cut of the Fellowship of the Ring if it comes to that. So here's the question: does it make for better cinema for me? Yes. Does it make for better cinema for everybody else? Probably not. By adding and by removing, where it does make for better cinema by removing.
You just reverse the question, right?
Sorry. Yes. Does it make for better cinema for me by removing it? No, but it doesn't make for better cinema for everyone else by removing it. Yes. Because people will be wondering, who's this Gildor guy, and why did we spend such a short amount of time with him, and why is he so important that we spent this time with him, and now he's no longer in the film at all? Unless they would have brought him to Helm's Deep. They could have done that.
And then killed him like they killed Haldor.
That's right. I just started to think, how do they bring him back? They can't really, because he's on his way out. So
can't. So I understand your answer, and in a rare instance, we are going to be at odds both times here. I think it does not make for better cinema. Here's why. I take this question perhaps in a slightly different way from you. I'm not asking, when I say answer this question, I don't mean I don't start with the presumption you have 3 hours to fit everything from from Fellowship of the Ring into that 3 hours. So does the fact that you left this out make it better cinema? In that specific, very twisted way of asking the question, yeah, sure, it makes for better cinema. But I think the larger question, when I answer this question about changes, what I'm thinking is, does the nature of the change make for better cinema for the viewing audience? Because there are some things that are better suited to cinema. And in that sense, I say no, because I don't put limits on the length of movie that there could be within certain reason. But I do think that just this element being left out leaves a lot. Like, they could have done a shortened version. They didn't have to do the full 7 pages of dialogue and travels. They could have done, a minute and a half of cuts of them travel, and a few Gildor and Frodo speaking and saying a few things, and then showing them eating and falling asleep in Woodhall, and that's it. So I think it would have been worth a couple minutes of cinema to put the elves in.
Yeah. I mean, I could easily have gone to no on this here too. I just, even if it was a short amount of time, I don't know the science of cinema, and so I'm making some educated guesses here on what I think it would
Yep.
require. And if you added all these small characters in short
hmm
in
You would
short
have
bits,
a 6 hour movie. Got it. Don't care. I'm looking at one change at a time, each change,
no,
and
I
like
wasn't going to
if you
say
have to have a
it's
6 hour
a.
movie,
I wasn't going
I
to say it's a 6 hour movie. I was going to say it's too many characters to imbibe in a 6 hour or 4 hour or 5 hour or 9 hour time frame unless you give it the right amount of time. And I think if you, at some point, you got to say, like, does it make for better cinema? Are we going to have 6 films for the Lord of the Rings? Maybe, but that's not what Peter Jackson did. Did it make for his movie to be a little bit better? That's the way that I look at it. Yes, it
Hmm,
probably did by removing it, but
okay.
we're looking at it slightly differently. But I could have easily said no too. I would have liked to have seen him
I just
personally. So
I perhaps I love the high elves too much, so I'm sticking with
yes,
my
yeah,
no.
all right. You're such a top 1%er there of those high elves. Okay, so let's talk about then the change. How much do you like the change? Um, it didn't, it almost bothered me more that they said wood elves because that's just clearly wrong.
But that's not
That
what we're
is not
talking
just an
about here,
omission.
right?
No, I know, but that was added, and they added the wood elves. So I'm just
Yeah,
going to go
yeah,
straight down the middle with this. I'm going to go 2.5,
yeah.
and say that's it. It didn't bother me a ton. I wish they would have left it in, but I can accept it without it.
Yeah, I don't like the change, and I have the exact same score as the last one for the exact same reason. You're cutting out content that adds to the
8?
richness of the world,
Is it a
and
1.8?
yes, sir. And
Okay.
so 1.8 is my answer because I think that those things like the Barrow Downs and like the High Elves, Gildor's folk, really enriches people's experience about what the world is like
Yeah,
and what Tolkien's world is like. So don't like it. It's an omission. So 1.8.
1.8. All right. Yeah, you can be wrong every once in a while. All right, guys. There you go. That's a glimpse of Gildor. We both, well, when it comes down to it, I mean, come on, we both wish we would have gotten a lot more Gildor in this, regardless.
Yes, sir.
And
Would have been nice.
maybe one day we will. Hey, like you mentioned, I think it was in the last episode. Was it? Mickey Mouse is now in public domain, at least the Steamboat Willie version.
Steamboat Willie version.
It will be maybe in our lifetime that the Lord of the Rings comes into, or the Hobbit comes into public domain, and we'll see a better version of that, or
and
probably
and
a lot of worse
worse
versions of that too.
versions too. Yeah.